Welcome, golf fans, pursuers of knowledge and the almighty dollar. This is your golf guru bringing you the final conclusion to the 2023 PGA season. Of course, we're at the Tour Championship, and this is going to be my preview show where I'm going to go over everything about the Tour Championship that you need to know before putting any bets or making those DFS picks. And I'm going to go over all the guys that I like. I've actually got funny enough, I call it the Lucky 11 picks I'm going to give you from a DFS side, and my bets, which is not as large as usual from how many, but I think the quality is definitely up there, and let's keep this winning streak going along. Of course, we've hit Glover back-to-back, and then we just hit Victor Hovland yesterday. So all that said, thanks for stopping by so we can get another winner and get a great ending to this 2023 season. All right, so I talked a bit already, of course, about the success with Victor, and really what put me on Victor pre-tournament and during the tournament was everything I actually saw at the St. Jude and what he did, of course, on the comp course that I talked about being the number one, which is Jack's Place at Murfield Village. And I think from a comparable side, I think it's the best comp course out there. Talked quite a bit about that in the prior BMW show. But amazing that Victor, of course, had to go out and shoot a round of his life. His lowest score ever, 61 on the PGA Tour. So broke, of course, the course record at Olympia Fields, which I think was set prior just a day before with Max Homa shooting, I believe, what he shoot a 62. So it was an 8 under, I think, ultimately said, yeah, 8 under, par 70. But also a back nine of shooting 28. So, I mean, there was times where I thought of cashing it out with some of the things they were offering me. But I said, you know what? I've done this in the past. It's burned me. Let's just ride it out and see if Victor can pull this off. And birdies 17, 18 at the very end, two of the hardest holes on the course, which sealed it. And of course, also Scotty and his putter. We're going to dive a little more into that. But I mentioned I hit it pre-tournament, 14-1. There was a little better maybe odds out there in the beginning, 16-1. But then I hit it also live, and it gave me a boost. So I got to hit him again at 16.5-1, which, like I said, for me, really kind of made the event. Now, I told you guys, I'm not a huge fan of the FedEx Cup playoffs. A lot of probably golf purists and guys that are really in, or gals that really watch a ton of golf, I don't know how into it they are either. They've tried all kinds of different formats and ways to get us excited. And I think if you put it up against all the other sports from football, baseball, basketball, all the top major ones, right? There's always an elimination portion to playoffs, and they don't have that here. And I think that is honestly the problem. And I mean, I'm not the first one to state this, and I'm not going to be the last, but they literally have the format already done, figured out. They play it every year, used to, which was a WGC Dell match play at Austin Country Club. And I believe, I'm just going off the top of my head, I think it's 80 players get into that, right? You've got the pods that they have. So, you get at least 2 days of watching all the stars. And then, of course, coming out of the pods, and then it gets narrowed down. It's 4 days of golf. But, I mean, you could spread that over a couple weekends. And for me, that would be way more compelling and exciting, with the brackets and everything. I mean, it's one of the favorite events that I have every year for the golf season. It's my favorite to do the analysis on and to talk about. I just don't get it. I think the reason why a lot of people kind of don't get too excited about this is, great, now we got 30 guys who are going to make a lot of money. And it seems like it's all about the money, and that's supposed to get our attention and not about, the drama and the elimination. Look at guys like a Rahm who's struggling right now, which we'll dive a little into. He could be eliminated out of his pod. There would be so much more to it in drama than what we're getting. And so hence, now we're down to 30 guys. And again, I watched for the BMW, I'm not going to lie, if I added up all my viewage coverage, the most would have been the back nine on Sunday, which is like the typical average golf fan. So if you've got someone like me who typically watches from first tee off on Thursday morning to the very ending of the tournament, I watch almost 99 to 100% of all shots, all coverage. It's what I love. Of course, I've got a lot invested. Where this weekend from Thursday, literally, I think if I did a rough summary, I probably watched 3 hours total, which is crazy for me. But it shows that that's about how much, interest I had in it. But if it wasn't for Victor doing what he did, also you had Homa. So a few of my favorite guys, where you had Homa go out and have a really nice day. As I mentioned, shoot 8 under. You had Bernsey, who also was on Saturday. I think shot 8 under, kind of out of nowhere. You had Henley shoot 7 under yesterday. So funny enough, a lot of my favorite guys to bet, talk about using DFS, did have some really good days. So again, this was just kind of again pointing out, as I mentioned, that I was really leveraging guys that did well at Jack's Place, Murfield Village, where they play the Memorial. Hence, that's where, of course, Victor got his last win. And what was unique was the putter again caught on fire, just like it did at Jack's, where you gained 6.1 there to win the Memorial, and then gained 6.2, of course, to win the BMW Championship. But I mean, the guy was just in fuego from tee to green, and you could see that pretty exact from both tournaments. So that was just one other thing I was just going to show you guys. And then I mentioned Scotty. I mean, I think this year is going to go down of like, he could have literally won, I don't know, 7 to 10 tournaments, it feels like, if he could have just putted neutral on stroke gain putting. And what does that mean? Just again, if you are new to that whole kind of terminology, is don't be the worst in the field. You don't have to be the best. Just be average. And what you could see back in 2021, 2022, where he had his the most wins and a really crazy season, he was a little above average with his putter. Other than that, he's been back of the pack since he's kind of came out on tour. And this year just so happens to be his worst. But kind of like a Colin Morikawa, we're starting to get almost that feeling of, well, and one of the best ball strikers on tour, he just needs to gain a stroke or neutral with a putter, and the guy can win. And there's, I've always said there's a few guys out there like that, but Scotty has exemplified it. And again, you could see where I believe was 17. He missed the putt for par. I think he had a birdie putt, missed that, went too far by it, and then bogeyed that hole, and it was game over. I literally tweeted out right after that it's over. Victor Hovland's won. Of course, Fitzy and Scotty would have had a hole out for an eagle on 18 to take it to a playoff. And if you want to just get a bigger picture of the guys from who finished in the top 10, maybe there's some stroke gain stuff you want to look at for what's coming up in the Tour Championship. This is how they did. I mentioned already, Victor had a very hot putter. The hottest putter out there was Fitzy, gaining 7.6. Not the greatest off the tee, but did well with the irons. You had Rory, same thing almost as Scotty. I mean, he made a few birdies on the back nine, but man, did he have a ton of opportunities to win that thing. And again, the putter kind of let him down, which is funny. I think they both have made putter changes here in the last couple tournaments. Got Brian Harman, who showed up again. I mean, pretty much since the Open, we haven't seen a whole lot of him doing well. Again, not great off the tee, but just went nuts with the putter, and that was really it for him. And Max Homa, finally, it's been a while since Max has actually gained quite a bit with the putter. When I say that, like a couple strokes, he gained almost 6. So again, you can kind of see over and over, yep, you had to hit a lot of fairways, a lot of greens, but the putter had to heat up. And then my buddy Russ Henley, funny enough, actually did it more tee to green and not with the putter, but still played pretty well. All right, the last thing I'm going to touch on is Jon Rahm, of course. He should have been the number one player going into the Tour Championship, starting at 10 under. And with his recent play, has faltered since his break. So I just wanted to pull up his stroke gain stats since his last win at the Masters. That was back in early April. And then, showed up at the RBC Heritage, almost missed a cut there, but no shocker. It was just amazing that he actually did play, but actually had a really good weekend and kind of surged back up. And then, of course, he had that duel with Finau at the Mexico Open. Lost that even though he was putting, gaining 8 strokes on those past palm greens. But then kind of hit or miss. I mean, not that well at the PGA. Pretty decent here. He missed a cut at the Travelers. And then, of course, took that break after the Open, where he had a second. And I believe a lot of that also was kind of a comeback on the weekend. But really, what I'm focusing on is what's been going on since he's come out of the break. A 37th and a 31st. Again, no cut events, which, sometimes he would have missed a cut, especially at the St. Jude. But you can see off the tee, he's been fighting to hit that typical, fade that he does, hitting it down the left. It always fades back to the right. That thing's not fading at times. It's hooking at times. So off the tee has really been the issue. But the putter, I think it's kind of just frustrations that went all the way through the bag, and not the time if you're Jon Rahm that you're all of a sudden going to have some issues with the golf swing when you're trying to, should probably still win Player of the Year, but also to bring home, the big money for winning the FedEx. But we'll see. He's still right there. And on that note, we can take a look. Yes, Jon Rahm did drop back a little bit. Actually, like I said, I believe going in, he was 1 going to the BMW and has fallen to 4th. So 4 strokes back. But this gives you a quick understanding of where all the guys fit. And if you don't know, and I tweeted this out earlier this morning, hopefully people, which I doubt, because it wasn't like there was that amazing odds out there. But if you don't understand how the Tour Championship works and the betting, you've got these starting strokes, stagger start, however you want to call it. If you looked early this morning, all they did was just put the odds out and didn't mention anything about the stroke part. And I still haven't seen the odds without. So typically with these stagger starts, the odds makers will put out odds giving the strokes, and then they'll put odds out, remove the strokes, just a straight up tournament. Some things to note if you want to go back. So 2019 is when this staggered start kind of happened. And the first year was Justin Thomas came in at that 10 under. And I believe Rory was 4 strokes behind, and he beat JT that year. And then, of course, we all know last year you had Scotty Scheffler again starting in the one hole. Like if you think about it like an F1 or race car, in the first position, pole position. And I believe Rory was, again, about 4 or 5 strokes back. He also came back and beat Scotty. Now, it didn't help that Scotty shot a 73, 3 over at East Lake on the final day, which really helped him kind of move up. So, but overall, typically, the guys, if you're looking just from an outright win, no one's ever come from like, I believe the biggest was 4 under. But I think I've got that in my course breakdown. But the rest of these guys can make quite a move, especially in a DFS. And like I said, we'll do that in a course breakdown. But if you want to know guys that I'm looking at from a betting side, I'll just let you know right now, and then I'll talk about the odds after. Here's the 5 guys that I'm looking to bet. And there is a consistency. 4 out of 5 of these guys have won the Wells Fargo or have won at Quail Hollow or been very good. The only one outside of that would be Victor Hovland, where he's only played there twice. He still had decent starts. But of course, Rory's won Wells Fargo a couple of times. Max, I believe that was his first win, was at Wells Fargo. You, of course, had Wyndham Clark just win it this year. And also Xander Schauffele. And of course, Xander just owns this course at East Lake, and we'll get into that. All right, so let's talk about the course breakdown. Of course, they are moving to the final spot to hot Atlanta, Georgia, where they'll be teeing it up at East Lake Golf Club. One of the older courses that's been around. This course actually is kind of interesting. Whenever they get into the Tour Championship, they'll talk about the whole history of East Lake, where it's actually been abandoned, had to be brought back to life. Like there's a whole thing on it, but it's kind of interesting to check out. It's been hosting the Tour Championship since 2004, and it's a Donald Ross design. There's been some renovations here and there, and there's actually one, I think that I read that's going to be coming up after this tournament ends. Nothing major, just some minor renovations to it. We are on another par 70. It feels like, and I haven't even looked, but I'm pretty sure all the FedEx Cup events are par 70s, and the last 2, so of course Olympia Fields was almost the exact same yardage as this, 7,346 yards, and I think TPC Southwind, I think played around like 71, so it's a little shorter, but still a par 70. The big differences between the 3 that I see, of course, the greens, we're on Bermuda, where I believe what we just left bent. And the other difference is you have more room to spray it here, and the rough is not as penal as the first 2 that we just went to, because, of course, Bermuda rough was pretty dense at TPC Southwind, and then, of course, I think the rough got like 6 inches over at Olympia Fields. You do have these Zoysia fairways again, which is also very compatible to what we saw at TPC Southwind, which again brings the ball like up on a perfect surface every time. So the PGA Tour players typically can score very well and love when they get to play off Zoysia. 2.5 inch, same as last year, Bermuda rough, which again it still can be penal depending on where you fall into, because even though it's not 4 inches, because it is Bermuda and is very grainy and can, depending on which way that the grass is growing, where your ball is at, can cause some problems. But what I've seen here in past is, historical stroking information, that it's not about hitting fairways as much as the other ones. It's all about distance. Of course, we're down to 30 players with a stagger start, no cut. We talk a little bit about history if you don't know. Of course, last year I already mentioned about what Rory did coming back from, I believe, so it's been 4 strokes to beat Scotty. You had Cantlay, who I believe started out actually in the lead. Yeah, because he had 10 and won it in 2021. And then a couple of notables that year was Rahm and Na. Actually, if you removed away the stagger strokes, they both shot 14 under. So Kevin Na, out of my mind, out of this whole Tour Championship since the stagger start, was the biggest long shot that if you had him from a DFS perspective, so technically if you bet him without the staggered strokes, then you would have won some money. If you bet him with, he still wouldn't have mattered. He couldn't win it, but he made a huge move. And from a DFS perspective, it was one of like 6,000 one of the cheaper guys, and would have definitely been good there. And then going back to 2020, DJ won, shot 11 under. So 11 under, 14 unders, kind of around what we're seeing here. And then Xander, I believe this was the year, his rookie season with JT, when they had two different trophies. And I think I have a picture of that in here, which was really weird back when you could actually win the FedEx Cup playoffs, lose the Tour Championship, and somebody else could win that. I think it even happened also when Tiger won it, if I remember. I think he won the Tour Championship back, so was that 2019, 2018, but did not actually win the FedEx Cup playoffs. Average green size. So I saw this. So last year I had 6,000, a little over 6,000 square feet for the average green size here at East Lake. And then I noticed this year it dropped by like 400 square feet. So I don't know if they did some changing of the greens, but maybe the greens got a little smaller because that 5,600 is getting more towards the average, where these greens used to be always some of the largest greens on the PGA Tour. I got 24 acres of fairway. If you put that against what we just saw last week, I think it was 21. So again, some wider fairways to hit, but also it does come up that these are some of the tougher fairways to hit on a PGA season. You got a bunch of sand at 74 sand bunkers, and you've got, I think, 4 water hazards, and I think they say 6 holes water comes into play. We'll look at the course map. The only thing I actually see is 4 holes that actually can come into play. You've got some crazy, slopey, fast lightning greens, and because it is a Donald Ross, which we've seen quite a bit, I think the course we just came off, Olympia, was a Donald Ross. Typically, that means the greens pitch from back to front. Same thing when they play the Rocket Mortgage in the Detroit Country Club. So I mentioned this course defense, some of the 10th toughest fairways to hit on tour, a lot of uneven lies in the fairways. So really the best comp course for this, I think, is Augusta. If you had Bermuda greens at Augusta, if you think about the slope in the greens, the big greens, and also, where bombers typically do well at Augusta. The problem is we just don't have stroke gain data because, of course, it's like their own world and they don't allow anything at Augusta. So it's hard to do that. But the next for me is always Quail Hollow, where they play the Wells Fargo. Players that miss the fairways hit the greens about 50% of the time. So there is, a priority on trying to hit as many as you can. And I already talked about the greens are crazy. And then they got some really long par threes. Is also a defense here. I believe 3 out of the 4 are over 200 yards. And then I kind of stated this: every winner of the Tour Championship in this current format has, started the week at least 4 under or better. 2 of winners did start at 10 under, which I also showed. It's really unlikely that anybody outside the top 10 will win this tournament and the 18 million first place prize. But it is golf. Things do go a little wacky, but you have to have a lot of things happen. You got to have a lot of guys at the top play really bad, and you got to have some guys in the middle that just shoot their best round of their life. All right, so not the prettiest map, but it will give you a quick understanding of where some of the water lurks on here. And of course, off the tee at 1, again, that's like amateur stuff. If you put it in this body of water off 1, you're probably not on the PGA Tour. But number 9 could maybe cause a problem on this par 3. Number 8 would definitely be the one that is probably, I'd say, the most significant that you could have some water problems, especially if you're like John Rahm and you play the fade down the edge and it does not. Or Jordan Spieth also seems like when he does miss, it is that kind of smother hook. 15 is like an island green, kind of close to what you see on number 718 at the Players for TPC Sawgrass. Now, I say it's an island. It's not technically an island. It's more of a peninsula, but you'll see in the picture I show you that it's pretty much an island, and you're actually shooting all the way across from here. 18, water could come into a little bit of play. And that's really about it. That would be a guess on your approach. It looks like, I guess it's one of the easier holes, if I remember, but we'll look at the scorecard here shortly. And then what I was kind of stating is here's 15. Tee box would be somewhere to the right we do not see, but got a trap on the left. I'm guessing maybe a trap on the right. But of course, yeah, if you if you miss, as we've seen, typically you put a lot of water around a green on the PGA Tour. It does get guys, but I think it is the shortest. I think it's like 175 is the distance. Like I said, all the rest are like 200, 225. All right, so let's take a quick look at the scorecard. I did check all the yardages. We're good there. Let you start out not with a gentle handshake, the second hardest hole, teeing off on 1, this very long par 4. You got a pretty decent par 3, almost at 200 yards. And then it looks like a lot of the scoring will take place here on the back 9 is the easier, which was very similar to what we just saw at Olympia Fields. You end the front 9 with a couple of the hardest holes. The number 1 hardest hole will be number 14. a 520 par 4. That's really about it. And we can pull up the scorecard, and I mentioned there's that, let's see what number 15 is. So I take that back. I was thinking that number 2 was that, so that hole with all the water around, it's actually 211 yards. So I was incorrect on that. You've got number 11 at 214. You've got number 9 at 235 yards. So all very big boy par 3s. And I thought this one was like 175. And of course, they can move the tees, which could shorten or lengthen a little bit. But no, it's pretty much 200 225, which I did put in the stroke gain models that we'll be discussing. What areas do we need to focus on from a stroke gain? You know, what have the guys done well in the past? And it is very hit or miss is what I've noticed. The year that Cantlay won, I mentioned when Kevin Na and John Rahm went nuts, shot 14 under. You know, Na did it with just crazy irons. Typically does with the putter, and he still gained 3 strokes. But Cantlay actually lost 0.2, which is pretty much neutral, but just everything else very well. But as you kind of move through these, you know, the one thing I guess for me was approach kind of stood out. But the year that DJ won, you could see that guys actually lost. Top 3 out of 4 lost with the irons. You know, but again, you know, gained it off the tee, gating around the green. So of course they had to be chipping in and whatnot. But the putter also didn't really stand out. So where I'm going with all this is looking through this, like nothing really stood out to me. But how I see this is a second shot course. Approach is always king. I don't think that's going to change, of course. Typically to win, you're going to have to get pretty hot with the putter, you know, and that's kind of what Rory did here. Not so much with the irons, but he went nuclear with the putter. Sungjae Im, typically, as I always mentioned, on Bermuda, I like him. And you can see Scotty Scheffler again lost 3.5 strokes, hence, you know, why he faltered last year. So with all that said, the player profile that I'm looking at is, you know, I'm going to go with approach first. You need good ball strikers. You got kind of a mix of these longer par 4s and shorter par 4s. But with those long par 3s, I want guys that are just really good with the long irons and the hybrids. Again, fairways are not as important here as what I've seen. And I want guys that can just bomb it. And yeah, if you go a little wayward, that's okay. I mean, like a Rory, which, you know, sometimes not always super accurate, but definitely we know one of the longest. We're looking for guys that, you know, typically putt well on Bermuda. And then actually I got an odd kind of mix, but when I kind of go through the card, what I like is still the ball striking numbers for prox to the pin, 175 to 200. That stat typically pulls off some of the better ball strikers. And then, of course, also there's quite a few of these shorter par 4s, kind of a mix of like 5 and 6, if I remember correct, 100 to 125. So again, you don't know what prox to the pin is. When you're hitting your approach shot to the green, to the pin, from that distance, who gets the ball closest on average to the pin? That's what prox to the pin is. Of course, this tournament does allow a little bit more for birdies. And also, I mentioned those long par 3s. We've got 3 of them 200 plus, but you could almost say 4 of them are 200 plus. So that is a key stat. 2 things I want to note that I did not mention on the recap was, of course, which was kind of crazy, Hideki Matsuyama withdrew. I actually put 3 teams into the big game. That was it. And Hideki was in one of them. When I start thinking about ball striking, I always think of Hideki. But, of course, he's pulled out due to a back injury and then, of course, has missed. So we don't have to, you know, we're not worried about Hideki, but that kind of stinks. So it kind of reminds me a little bit, of course, of Will Z last year, what happened to him after he won the FedEx St. Jude at TPC Southwind. Of course, then could not finish and could not play the next 2 events. And we still have not seen him on tour yet, hoping the Tournament of Champions, somewhere around there, kick off the new year, he'll be back. So as always, I've created a custom stat model for you guys, and using what we just talked about on the player profile, it's not exactly in order, but the number one thing that's most weighted, 25%, is approach. I got ball striking at 15. I got driving distance at 20. I got that prox to the pin, 175 to 200 at 5%. The 100 to 125 at 5%. I got putting at 10. Those par 3s from 200 to 225 at 5%. And then, of course, you need to meet birdies, and I got that at 15%. We're looking at the past 6 tournaments. Of course, this is including the BMW, the St. Jude are all in here. And over the past 24 rounds, it's all depending if you somehow missed a cut a little while back. I got no filters turned on. And if you want to know against that model, who shows up number 1? Rory McIlroy. You got Scotty Scheffler, of course, Lucas Glover with the 2 wins recently. You got Victor Hovland, our recent winner. Mr. Patrick Cantlay, Xander Schauffele, Ricky Fowler, Rahm, Russ Henley, Burnsy, Fleetwood, Hatton, Tom Kim, Colin Morikawa, and Max Homa are your top 15 players, best recent form over the past 6 tournaments. 24 rounds. Okay, and as always, I do a recent form, looking at just the past 3 tournaments, which if I do my brain, so that would be what? The BMW, we got the St. Jude, neither here or there. Last 12 rounds of golf. Number 1, Viktor Hovland, Rory, Scheffler, Glover, Cantlay, Homa, Schauffele, Connors, Henley, Ricky Fowler, Keegan Bradley, Harman, Rahm, Fleetwood, Sammy Burns are the top 15 players over the last 3 tournaments against that model up there that I'm showing you. Now, if we go look at a little historical at East Lake, if you've been watching this for a while, there's really just 2 names that stand out. And of course, the betting odds kind of reflected a bit. Of course, Rory has come, as I mentioned, back from the pack twice. He loves this course. And also, if you know a little bit about golf, the other course that guy is in love with is Quail Hollow, as I mentioned, where he's won a ton at Wells Fargo. Now, even though I didn't really show up, I think this year, I think he did play. Didn't have the greatest finish, if I remember. I think it was like in the 20s. But the guy just loves these 2 tracks. Xander, the same thing, where, you know, if you will show Xander's history here, it's probably unprecedented to anybody else. It's ridiculous. The next would be Jason Day, but you also just keep an eye on how many rounds they played here. You got John Rahm. So that's your top 4 from a historical perspective. Viktor Hovland played a few tournaments. Russ Hindley played twice. Substraka's only played once, which was, I believe, last year. Scotty Scheffler has played 3 times. You got Homa has played once, made it to Tour Championship. You got Finau has done well here, but also has played quite a bit. You got Cantlay, Sungjae Im, Terrell Hatton, Morikawa, and Ricky Fowler. Terrell Hatton again a call out. That's only 4 rounds, but I know the 1 tournament he has played here did pretty well. That's just a picture I was mentioning that, you know, I thought it was just kind of funny at the time where you could literally, if you won the Tour Championship, you got this I don't know, kind of silver putter. And over here, of course, he won the FedEx. And again, I believe that happened with Tiger previously. Sorry for the eye chart, but I will talk you through this. This is what I typically show you guys, but I only show you like the top 10 guys, who's gained the most strokes at East Lake at this event over the last 5 years. And I mentioned Xander. So if you look at stroke gain total, he's gained 32 strokes over the last 5 years. And if you look, he's at a 4th, a 5th, a 2nd, and the 7th. Pretty crazy. And then if you look at Rory, and actually it didn't bring in 2017, but that's actually when that picture with JT and Xander, I think that's why I put that in there, to remind myself that he actually won it the previous year. So he's at a 1st, 2 seconds, a 4th, a 5th, and a 7th. So again, Xander loves East Lake. You got Rory again, who's had a couple wins here, an 8th, a 14th, a 7th. And again, you know, a little bit of this does have the starting implications, but that's why also just the stroke gain is kind of interesting to me, where you could kind of remove the finishes and really just focus on who's gained the most strokes on this track. And then after you get after Rory, it drops severely, where John Rahm has only gained 13 strokes over 5 years too. So that's like half. So even though he's had some good finishes, I would think under the current conditions of Rahm's game, and even really what he's done at East Lake, I feel like has not been amazing. I'm staying away from him, which I'm sure a lot of people are with a 10-foot pole. But yeah, just kind of call that out. And then funny enough, Max Homa was only played her once. Really enjoyed it. Again, back to the Wells Fargo, Quail Hollow comp. He gained 6.6 strokes here. Scotty's played it 3 times. Not the greatest in 2021. We also know he kind of collapsed last year, but has gained 6. And then Victor 6. And then you can kind of see the rest. Now, why I also pulled this out is I believe you've got 8 guys who've never played in the Tour Championship. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to show this. And it's Nick Taylor, Griot, Shank, Taylor Moore, Siwoo Kim, Tom Kim, Russ Henley, and Wyndham Clark do not show up, which is funny because I thought Russ Henley has played it, but it doesn't matter. At least it's shown up that they've never played in the Tour Championship. And then you've got Fitzy, who's played it once. You got Brian Harman, has played it once, and all these guys are in the negative stroke game, which was also interesting. Was Corey Connors kind of the worst, which is just weird, but I'm guessing it's the putter that he, out of 30 guys, ended up 26th, 22nd, and 26th. So Corey Connors is not someone that's looking too good. Glover is played it once way back in 2019. He had a T29. Burnsy played it the last 2 years, nothing too great. You got Cantlay, who's played it 4 out of 5 years, won it in 2021, but other than that, hasn't been amazing for Patrick. And then you got Collins, played it a few times. Best showing was a 6. Jordan Spieth played it twice, at least recently, a 13th and a 20th. And yeah, I think that's it. So yeah, I just wanted to give you kind of that you can look at all 30 players' history pretty quickly and see, at least historically, who's done well versus, who hasn't. Now, this is not looking at just putting. This is just, if I look at the last 6 tournaments played on Bermuda fairways, Bermuda greens, who's done well on those tracks against my model. And Scotty Scheffler comes up number 1. Rory McIlroy, Jon Rahm. Of course, think about the Florida swing, the players, the API, Honda. I don't know why I just threw that out there, but it is in Florida, but it doesn't really kind of go into Florida swing. But neither the Valspar could kind of fall under here. Yeah, those are strictly Bermuda everything. Terrell Hatton's done well. Wyndham Clark, Xander, Victor Hovland, Taylor Moore. Funny enough, of course, he won Valspar. Tony Finau, Patrick Cantlay, Jordan Spieth, Fleetwood, Emiliano Grillo, Burns, and Ricky Fowler. Also RBC Heritage. Also very heavy Bermuda, and it's, kind of, was it right after? Yeah, right now it's after the Masters. So just to give you some ideas who plays, and the reason why I bring that up also is typically guys that, we know that played college and born and raised in southern states who play their whole life on Bermuda typically do have an advantage just as much as guys that are in California who put on POA their whole life, like a Max Homa. They don't get as pissed off and don't get as rattled on those greens and understand the grass types and more comfortable with it. So that's why I do sometimes who does well on certain grass types. This is going to be a quick show, as I kind of mentioned early on, and really all I've got for you now, I'm going to talk about the betting and then the guys that I'm looking at from a DFS side. So I've got 5 bets in, and this is probably all I'll be putting in. It's probably pretty shocking because you guys typically never see me bet anybody under 20-1. That's about my cutoff, but because it is the last event of the year, and I feel really good that Rory's probably going to win this thing. Hence why he was on my thumbnail page, the cover. He's going off even on points bet at the same. So you're getting +3 money on him. And I kind of sat there and thought about it. I said, you know what? It's kind of worth, throw $100 on it and triple your money. Like, all right, I'll take that shot. I also like Victor Hovland still. We'll see if he can keep this up. But he really played well at the St. Jude, just the putter didn't work. And also, of course, what we just saw. But again, the putter was hot. So 5-1. So I put a bet on him. The guys that I like that are a little higher odds, and again, you're going to want to go to PointsBet or somewhere else other than DraftKings. These are DraftKings odds because you can get Xander at 35-1. He's starting at 3 under. So technically 7 strokes back from the beginning. But, again, it's 4 days of golf. A lot can happen. I mean, we literally saw Victor Hovland, when he made the turn, was 4 shots behind Scheffler when he made the turn on that back 9. Now, it was extreme, don't get me wrong, to shoot a 28, but it can happen. And you need both guys to kind of give. I mean, again, you can't even really say Scheffler played a bad round on Sunday. He shot 65, 5 under. Typically, that's enough to get it done. But anyways, I digress. Max Homa, same thing. You can get him. He's starting at 4 under. You can get him at 35-1 at, again, PointsBet. And then Wyndham Clark, literally, this is 2 reasons. The guy's got the distance off the tee. He didn't have the best St. Jude, but that course, TPC Southwind, is not a good course for him. You could see a little better showing at Olympia Fields. I think this course should set him very well. Also, you can get him 55-1 over at PointsBet. Again, I'm not sponsored by him. Go to Odds Checker, see where you get the best odds, but I only use 2. I just look at the 2, and that's all I use. I don't, shop to 8 different places. I like him at 55-1. Again, he's also starting at 4 under. So, not too far back, but that's as far as I'm going, which I talked about quite heavily, and you're going to hear a ton, that if you're not up there pretty much 4 under or better, the odds of you winning outright is pretty slim. Now, again, if you remove the stagger strokes, then maybe you could look at some more bets, and maybe I will. But right now, this is the only thing I see offered out there is with the starting stroke, stagger start, however you want to say it. All right, I was going to give you my top 10 DF picks, but actually I had 11 that I really liked. So you're getting 11 out of 30. And I told you guys, I mean, this is where it's kind of hard to do a lot of deep analysis. You only got 30 dudes. So I'm going to call it my lucky 11, and I'm going to tell you the guys that I will play from a DFS side. And I've tried to spread it out in the ranges. Funny enough, nobody in the 7,000 range, but I've got 2 guys at the very upper, of course. My top 2 guys will be Rory and Hovland. And then kind of in the 10,000 range, you got Homa and Xander. And then at 9,000, I do like Wyndham Clark, as I mentioned. Sungjae shows up well here. And again, when he's on Bermuda, I like his game. So, seems like it's a little better. It was very Jekyll and Hyde. if I was going to remove one guy and make it just my top 10, Sungjae Im would be the guy out. But for some reason, I like him here. I think he could do very well. Russ Henley's still been playing great golf. Right, had the chance to win them. So that was a hard one, right? Because you guys know I'm a big. But also, I mean, Glover was 110 to 1, and I think Russ Henley came in at like 20, 30 to 1, something like that. So, but Russ Henley's been playing amazing golf, and I'm going to stick with him. Typically, he was almost like Bermuda Burns for a while. One time on Bermuda greens, Russ Henley was awesome, but the putter has gotten better, but it, definitely wasn't what it used to be when it came to Bermuda. Terrell Hatton at 6,900. He hasn't been playing the best. A little bit has been the putter, but we all know that Terrell can turn it on, and has had a good showing here before. Burns again, we're on Bermuda. He did, like I said, had that one good round, which is funny. I played a little tiny bit of showdown and played him the first 2 days. Of course, he didn't do anything, and then didn't play him on Saturday, and he went nuts and shot another. So there you go. I got Grillo at 5,700. Just going to stick with him. Putter has not been treating him right. I think I watched a little bit on Sunday morning with him, and I think he had like 4 or 5 button hooks. So that's the ball's going in the hole, but instead of going in the hole, it just rips it out, shoots it 3 feet. He had quite a few of those. So if that putter goes, and then Adam Schenk, anytime I get him on Bermuda greens, especially for 5,200, I think he could be the sneaky kind of sleeper that could make that Kevin Na run up the board. That's my prediction. He's got great length. The irons, when they go, watch out. So 10th in the field here over the last 6 tournaments, so that's pretty good. Yeah, I like everything about Adam Schenk. Again, I don't think he can win outright, starting 10 shots back to start the day, but could he get up there in the top 5? He could. So he'll be kind of the guy that I probably plug in quite a bit on whatever DFS I do. So, all right, guys, that's it. That's a wrap to the season. I appreciate it. Hey, I got you guys all the FedEx Cup events. I know I was a little humdrum, but you kind of heard my explanation. I think I think quite a few people feel the way I do, that it'd be really nice if we're going to have a playoff to have it, eliminate dudes. Like, not in an 8 duo, you could say, well, they have a cut. Well, yeah, but it's not exactly how I would like to see dudes, going head to head and fighting to win the trophy than, a 4-day stroke match with no cuts. So again, I'm not humdrumming. Also, I'm probably leveraging to get the Dell match play back. As you guys know, last year was last year. We don't know. It's definitely not on the 2024 season, which is a super bummer. You've got one event that had it and you chucked it. So I think we all got to get a petition together and get rid of the format. As far as I'm concerned, I don't think it's ever going to happen, but it would be great to get rid of the way they do this FedEx Cup playoffs. And you can still use the points and all that. Just that's how they get ranked coming into the bracket, right? So anyways, all right. Hey, have a great weekend. Enjoy the Tour Championship. This will be it for me. And then I will be checking out what's coming on the fall swing. As I mentioned, I'm kind of excited about that. I will be putting shows out for the fall swing. So keep tuned for that. And then some of you guys asked me for my NFL draft best ball kind of analysis. I did put out a show, and it's not earth-shattering. Depending on how much you do, it might give you a lot of information. And if you do a lot from the NFL kind of best ball, you're probably going to be like, yep, I already knew that. So, check it out if you like. It is out, and I think I put it out last week. So, all right, guys, take care. All the best. Look forward to talking to you in the fall swing. And I'd like to see Victor just take it all down. Why not? It'd be pretty cool for him. And we'll see how it goes. All right, take care.